Hi everyone, it's Margaret with Creative Stamping with Margaret. Thanks for joining me today. Today's card is one of the cards from the May 2023 card class. Not only was it offered in person, but also offered as a kit to go class. So if you ordered the kit, you will have received this card. A couple of the cards in this month's class focused on the in colors, and I decided to use the Fresh as a Daisy that's the Sweet, but the Cheerful Daisy stamp set and the Coordinating Designer Series paper, which is the Fresh as a Daisy Designer Series paper, because this paper features all of the new in colors. It has the Copper Clay, the Wild Wheat, Boho Blue, Moody Mauve, and Pebbled Path. Plus, it includes the Pretty Peacock that has been brought back into the regular line of inks from Stampin' Up! This year, which I think a lot of us were excited because that was such a great color. But we are using the Cheerful Daisies Bundle as well as the Fresh as a Daisy Designer Series paper. If you ordered a kit to go, you will have received the materials in the kit. So you will have those things. You just need to order the stamp set for doing the card interior if you want to use the daisies and the sentiment. If you've not ordered this kit yet, you will have received the die cuts, but you can substitute with a sentiment and flowers of your choice. But this is a popular set, so you may want to add that to your stamp collection. So let's get on with our stamping and card creating. The inks that we're going to be using are the Wild Wheat and the Moody Mauve. If you have not yet ordered those, obviously you can substitute with basic black for the sentiment. But those are the colors we're focusing on, the in colors. And let me move this, make a little bit more room for myself. So for this card, we're using the Wild Wheat cardstock base. Our layering panel is the Fresh as a Daisy Designer Series paper. Let me double check and make sure I have that name right. Yes, that is correct, Fresh as a Daisy. Then of course we'll have a basic white panel for our card interior. I've got a panel of Moody Mauve Cardstock, and this is 3.5 by 3.5, which is the perfect size for using to cut the dies. You'll also need some scraps of the Wild Wheat to cut some fronds with, and a scrap of basic white for the sentiment, which you'll cut with the die in the die set. Let me show you that die. And this is that die. So all of the dies that I'm using on this card came from the Cheerful Daisies die set. So let's go ahead and fold and burnish our card base. Just make a little room here for myself. And this is that Wild Wheat card base. Next, we will add our panel of our Designer Series paper. We were talking in the class the other day that a lot of these colors remind us of the 1970s, late 70s, early 80s. Some of the colors, it seems like everything seems to come around, go around. And you know what? I just realized my mistake. I meant to wrap the ribbon, which would have come in your kit. Let's see if I can get this up before it sets. Yes. So you'll want to take and cut a piece of ribbon about, no, I think that's 5.5 inches. And we're going to wrap that around, and I'm just going to put glue dots on it to hold it, the edge in place, since I've already added the adhesive. And I'm putting it about 1.25 inches up. From the bottom of my card. I'm glad I caught that mistake before I gave this ink a chance to set, but of course there's always a way around it. We could have just trimmed and had a shorter ribbon underneath the card. And then just to hold that even more, I'm going to place a couple little glue dots under the ribbon near the center where that sentiment will go over that to hold that in place. See, that worked out perfectly. As I said, if you put that down, glue it, and forget to add that ribbon, just take and trim it and just lay a single piece of ribbon across. That will work as well. So we can put this to the side, and let's pull in our die cutting machine. We're going to cut our daisy panel, and since I did not want to bring in my large die cutting machine on my desk, I'm using the smaller one, the little minis, which it works with this. You just, as you noticed, I trim the edges off so that that cardstock doesn't bend and make it difficult to go through. Now this is a pretty intricate die in the center with all of those little dots, so I found going through twice. And in my larger cut and emboss machine, I did have to turn it a couple times at a couple different angles to get a good clear cut. But as you see here, I can see where that die went all the way through and cut all of those little pieces very nicely. And then you'll do the same with your fronds. You'll cut 2. On the main card, I only put 1 on my first card, but then after I made it, I thought that 2 may look a little bit better. And I also found that cutting the label for stamping was easier than trying to stamp and then cut. For some reason on this one, I was able to center my sentiment a little bit easier. And you would cut 2 of these and then 1 of the label. I will just make a note so that you will know that all of the materials that I'm using for this card will be listed in the description of this video, so you can refer back to the sizes that I've cut and the amounts that I have used. So now we're going to bring that in. I have already cleaned up one of these daisies, and I cut 2 of the little fronds. And I've used dimensionals on the back of the daisies, and I used actually the little mini dimensionals I found worked best. If you don't want to use dimensionals on these and only want to pop up the sentiment, feel free to do that. You could use adhesive sheet. Put adhesive sheet on the back of your cardstock before you run it through the die cutting machine, and then it will already have the adhesive on there. Even with these little mini dimensionals, I've trimmed some of them to make them even smaller. We just place some of these around on our daisy. Let's see. That one is going to show, so I'll move it to a different location and cut a smaller one. Then before I take the backs off, I'm just going to lay that how I would like and determine where I would like to place the wheat. And there's one piece, the wild wheat little frond piece. And there again, you could, well, I have something on the end. Oh, sorry about that. You could just use adhesive sheet on the back of this. I'm just going to add a couple little drops. I find it takes very little of the liquid adhesive, just in a couple little areas. Put a few drops and then I just sort of smear it out. A little of this goes a long way. You could also use the fine glue. I think it's called the fine glue pen actually, but I just am very partial to the multi-purpose liquid glue. So that's where we're going to have one. Then I think for this second one, as you see, I only added the one on the main card, but then after I did it, I thought it would look nice with a second, and I think that's a good location there. So it comes over a little on that ribbon. Adds a little bit more interest. Now we can remove all of our backs from our mini dimensionals. Next, pull in our sentiment panel and the stamp, wishing you brightest birthday stamp, along with our Moody Mauve stamping pad. Very good. I'm going to stamp that again. I did not have that super inked up in the center, so we will just pull in this other one. And let's see if I can ink it up a little bit better in the center. I'm going to stamp on the side here to see that there. What it was, I did not add enough pressure when I stamped. I'm going to pull it down to make sure I can see a little bit better. Hopefully it's still in your view. There, I pressed that a little bit better, much clearer. So we will add our sentiments. Sentiment, not sentiments, not a plural, it's singular. We will add that to the front of our card. Just sort of center that across the ribbon. And then to finish the front of the card, we're going to embellish it with the wheat color dots, in color dots. The wild wheat ones. And they come in 3 sizes, and I'm using 1 of each size. Just tucking them around the card. So now we have completed the front of our card. So let's work on the interior of the card. As you see, I just stamped a couple of the daisies, and I did the same on the front of the envelope. Let me just do a little housekeeping on my stamping space here so that it's not, and pull in the stamps we need. So I've pulled in the 2 stamps for the daisies. There is the half daisy stamp, which is, this is 2-step stamping. You have the outline and the center for each of those, and then we have the center of the daisy, which I'm going to stamp in the wheat. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm inking the outline, and I'm using the Moody Mauve, and I'm doing this full strength, and I'm just going to stamp 1 full daisy. Then I'm going to do the outline full strength. Next, I'm coming back with the center, and this is, I need to stamp off. I'm going to ink this up, or the center of the petals, I should say. So I'm stamping off. Let me link, or let me not link, but line this up. I have this note on here that says stamp off, and it's actually making it difficult for me. I put those on for the classes so they'll remember to stamp off. Here we are. And you'll notice it looks like that there are spaces missing. That is actually the way it is on the stamp. So do not think that you have misstamped. They actually have that missing pieces in the stamp. That's it for the Moody Mauve. I'll do the envelopes later, but it's the same concept on the envelope. Now we have the wheat, and we're using the center, just the full strength. And this looks a little funny the way I set that. So I'm going to go back and just stick another petal in there and look like it's a cluster of petals. I didn't realize the angle that I placed that, so I'm going to show you what to do if you were to do the same thing I did. Since there are a lot of daisies here, we're just going to stamp over, pull this in, and we're just going to make it a whole cluster. I'm going to put one down in between these just to do the same, to fill in that gap. If you had leaves, you could stamp leaves in there, but since I did not bring out leaves, I'm doing as such. Well, I may as well do the envelope. That will be our center. Let's go ahead and I'm just doing the single daisy on the front. There again, don't forget to stamp off. We'll add our wild wheat center. So all that's left to do is glue the center piece in to our card. Did you see what I just did? Well, you know what that calls for. We're going to stick a daisy down. I'm going to show you how to repair something as you go along. So I'm just going to take this little daisy. Let me get a scrap piece of paper just to slide under this edge that I'm lifting, so that if I'm stamping off, it will stamp off there. How many times have you look right there on my finger? That's why. I have learned there is always a way to hide those little boo-boos. And of course, we're our worst critics, our own critics. So I should have used a different type of paper, because now I've stuck that paper in there, but it's not completely set, so it pulls right out. Now I can go down there. Mission accomplished. And actually that looks pretty good. So we have completed our in color card featuring the Cheerful Daisies Bundle, as well as the Fresh as a Daisy Designer Series paper. And the in colors that we focused on this particular card are the Moody Mauve and the Wild Wheat. This is Margaret Knight. Thanks for joining me today. I hope that you will subscribe to my channel and also check out my blog. I will do a blog post on this card, but also you'll find the full list of materials needed for making this card in the description of this video. Have a great rest of your day.